Good evening, everyone. I just have a quick comment for tonight's meeting. I want to welcome everyone. But due to COVID restrictions, we have limited seating capacity in the council room tonight. The meeting can be viewed online on the MCTV Facebook page, Vimeo, Channel 98, and Easton Cable, and also on the eastonmd.gov website. Comments can also be submitted to the mayor and council electronically. If you're here today to comment on the Easton Promenade concept, the town council will be having a limited discussion later on in the agenda about the closure of the parking spaces last weekend and how that went and whether we should continue pending consideration of other options. Last week, we established a process that includes a meeting of the downtown businesses on Thursday morning, and the town council will not be considering a specific long-term proposal until after that meeting takes place. Once we have a proposal to consider, we plan on having a public hearing, and I just want to make sure everyone is clear and aware of what the status is and the plans moving forward with the promenade. So let's stand for opening remarks by Mr. Abbatiello.
As our community continues to deal with the effects of the COVID-19 virus, it is the hope of many that we can work together to solve the problems that existed before the pandemic and those that have arisen after. In the words of Union Leader Cesar Chavez, we cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others for their sakes and for our own. Say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Tonight, we'd like to welcome our newest council member, Reverend Davis, for his swearing in with the mayor.
Okay, Reverend Davis, if you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I
Reverend Elmer Neal Davis, Jr.,
do swear or affirm
do swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland
and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and support the Constitution and the laws thereof,
and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment,
and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully, without partiality or prejudice, execute the office of Council Member, Ward 4,
execute the office of Council Member, Ward 4,
for the remainder of a 4-year term, according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
according to the Constitution and the laws of this state.
You're there. This makes it official. And look, I can almost read it. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. What do we do next?
Take your spot. So next we have the approval of the minutes from July 6th, July 8th, and July 14th meetings and workshops.
Motion to approve the minutes of July 6th, council meeting July 8th and July 14th, 2020 workshops.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mayor Willey.
You have on the agenda for tonight to look at a proposal for naming policies in the town of Easton. Periodically, we get individuals, they could be family members, they could be families, they could be organizations that feel like a citizen of the town of Easton has done some outstanding service or function that benefits the town and the citizens, and they would like to see a member, he or him, memorialized with their name on a building or a tree or a plaque or something of that nature. You have a copy of that procedure in place in your hands, and if it meets muster, I'd like to get a vote to get that approved so we can get it in operation. But we do have several people that have talked about naming various things for members of the community. They could be living or dead, but we do have several people that need to be honored in such a way.
Mayor Willey, I think one of the things we discussed was kicking it back down to the park board for their comment before we vote on it.
Talked briefly with Lorraine, she was okay with it, so. And I
That's
will
in-
come to the next park board meeting to make sure that everybody has seen it, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Mayor, can we just take a minute and cover the exclusions, because I think that's really important. Naming associations with smoking or vaping products, alcohol, contraceptives, religious organizations, political candidates or partisan organizations, individual naming dedications made to a person to celebrate a special occasion, such as a birth, a marriage, an anniversary, an accomplishment, or a major landmark event, such as retirement or happenings. Those are all exclusions, and I think that those are good. And the fact that the procedure is that there'll be a submission of an application to the town, consideration by appropriate boards, and then council approval. So I thought it was well-written, and I'm ready to make a motion to approve this new policy.
Okay, before you get a second, if I may, we do have a few places in town now. The courthouse was named after Mayor George Murphy, who was a longtime mayor of the town of Easton. Henry Purdy is on one of the fire stations. Gene Butler's on one of the fire stations. And we just named a memorial tree for John Ford. And we do have other possibilities coming up. So, we get a second.
A second.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Any other comments related to the naming procedure? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay. Taking pen in hand, I want to write this down so I didn't forget anything. It has been an eventful few weeks in Easton. Some events good, some not so good. We have seen the business community split over our best to assist them during the recent pandemic and ongoing pandemic problems. We've seen a very real communications lapse further complicate the issues. On the plus side, several individuals have offered their expertise to help find a remedy and get us back on track. Maybe it can still be achieved. Corrective action has already begun with changes in the communication structure. Lynn Thomas has been given the task of taking a fresh look at the AKRF study, which I think all of you know is for the downtown area, the courtyard project that's now in excess of 15 years old. In addition to those projects, Lynn also has the comprehensive zoning ordinance update. He has the design guidelines update that we talked about, the comprehensive plan, which is usually better than a year to get going, it's usually closer to 2 years. And also he's looking at an East End small area plan. So Lynn's going to be pretty busy, and to drag him and expect him to do something else was just a little bit too much. The AKRF study, which now is probably 15 years old, but includes a courtyard behind the Washington Street businesses and restaurants. Can the town afford 2 separate economic development groups? We've got to talk about that. Clearly, what are the objectives? Proper funding, determination of results, and as mentioned, changes are underway and efforts at fence mending are starting. Maybe it's not too late. I would ask for your support over the next few weeks as further changes are contemplated. we really need to be moving in the same direction. That's that part of it. And the person that I've asked this morning, with your approval to sit in on the various economic development meetings and report back to the council, is Natalie Slater, who is now with Easton Economic Development Corporation. And I have a list here of projects that Natalie has already done in the last year to get her feet on the ground, understand what's happening, and to move forward with this area, in this area.
So Mayor, are you asking for her to be approved by us to
Yes.
be the liaison for this? Or to head this up?
For the Easton Business Alliance and the Easton Economic Development Corporation.
So she's gonna be the liaison for both organizations with the town?
Pardon?
She's representing both organizations?
And that was normally done by Lynn, is that correct?
Lynn was doing some of that, and some of it, we found that Lynn was tied up on other things, and we just weren't getting the information around if we should. No offense to Lynn, we just stretched him a little bit too thin, as we've done with other members of the town government, and we'll have to make some changes there before it's over with.
Will she report directly to you, Mayor?
Yes,
And then you in turn will report to us?
the council will get written reports of what's going on.
I make a motion for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think that's it for me.
Anyone have any questions for the mayor? Thanks, Mayor. Don?
President Cook, Council, it's a rare occasion, but I don't have anything specific for your agenda this evening. However, I would like to give congratulations to Reverend Davis for filling the 4th board.
Any questions for Mr. Richardson? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Van Amberg?
I don't have anything at this point. I do have the Dutchman's Lane coming up in a little bit.
Any questions for Sharon? All right, thank you. All right, so now we have RK&K reporting on the Tanyard branch. And gentlemen, I don't know if you want to wipe it down before you use the microphone on, and just wipe, when you're done, let's just. We'll clean up afterwards. Okay.
Good evening, I'm Sierra Chris from the town of Easton here on behalf of Rick Van Amberg, the town
Would you
engineer.
come step up to Mike? I can't hear you.
Sierra
please.
Chris from the town of Easton. I'm here to introduce, we have Patrick Hager and Nick Riley from RK&K. They're here to talk about a study they've done for us over almost past year or so. The background on this is that over the course of the past couple of years, Mr. Van Amberg and myself have identified, as we go forward with making changes and upgrades and repairs and replacements to our storm drain system, we find that we've had inconclusive, incomplete, contradictory, and gaps in our data. So we had discussed the need for a comprehensive model of our system to really educate us and help us make the best and most informed decisions to not only make a change as situations arise unplanned for, but also to plan long-term for upgrades in the best way. So we had contracted with RK&K to provide the study for us, starting with the Tanyard branch, which is about a third of the town. It's the northern part of the town, and it does include some of the biggest problems with flooding that we see in town, so we felt that that was a really great place to start. I'll let them tell you a little bit about what they've done.
Thank you. I'm Patrick Hager with RK&K. First off, we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and present to the mayor and the town council. We also appreciate the opportunity to work on this project. It's an important project, and as Sarah touched on, it's really, it goes well beyond a study. The study is kind of an offshoot of the effort that we put in. But really, the most important thing that will come out of this is that the town will now have a tool to have a modeling system to make informed decisions. Just to draw a simple comparison, if the town has a pipe that fails, typically maybe in the past, Department of Public Works would go out and replace it in kind. If it was 20-inch pipe, put a 20-inch pipe in. With this tool, what this model will allow to do is now the town can look at it and say, hey, do we have some upstream flooding? Do we have some other situations that are going on? Maybe we upsize this pipe, or maybe we downsize the pipe. And before, that was kind of made based on just previous experience. There's localized flooding in the area. If it's a 12-inch pipe, let's make it a 24-inch pipe. Seems intuitive, right? But then what does that mean downstream? As a result, do we alleviate flooding in one area and then we increase flooding potential in another area? So this is really a tool for the town moving forward, well beyond the scope of the final results of the study, to make those informed decisions, and then also work with any development that's going on. If somebody develops a property or whatever that's going to influence the watershed, they can work with the developer and understand what that means to the system. So we had a group of engineers that worked on this. The gentleman that led this overall effort unfortunately couldn't be here today because of travel restrictions. But we have Nick Riley, who's one of our hydraulics engineers, and he'll go through the remainder of the presentation. But again, we appreciate the opportunity to work with the town.
Thank you.
Next one, please. Oh, thanks, Patrick. So, yep, I'm Nick. And I guess I just want to start with, kind of walking through the process of how we got from the beginning of building the model to, like Patrick said, having a live-in, breathing tool the town can use. And so you can just see the Tanyard Branch watershed here highlighted in red. It's relatively large, as we heard. It's about 880 acres, or about a third of the town. Some of the data that we used in building this model included the Chesapeake Bay Foundation's land use, which is great for us to use because it's very detailed. We used the latest topographic data, which you see up here is referenced as the LIDAR data. And as Patrick mentioned, we started by looking at the town storm drain data and analyzing where there might be gaps in it. And we worked with the local firm Fink & Witten to go out and field collect some of that data so that we can incorporate it into the model, so that we could update the storm drain data for further use and just overall have a better working model. So as I mentioned in the last slide, this is actually an image of the land use. And there's a lot of colors up there, might be a little bit to digest, but the big takeaway from this slide are the red, the black, and the gray colors. They all represent impervious coverage within the watershed. And so our analysis found that it was about 39% impervious. And that's relatively high for this watershed, and so those things represent things like roads and buildings, roofs, all of that. And we wanted to bring this up because impervious coverage and land use in general is a big driver in the runoff and subsequently the flows that are used. So in general, the higher the amount of impervious coverage, the more runoff you get, and the quicker that runoff gets to where it's going. Next slide, please. So here is an overview of the actual swim model itself. And so we took the entire Tanyard Branch watershed and we subdivided it into 139 subwatersheds. And those are based on topographic divides and where those subbasins might drain to. And so they drain to things what we call the swim nodes. As you can see, there's almost 330 of those nodes, and those represent anything from storm drain inlets to stormwater manholes to the confluence of overland channels. They also can represent what we call storage nodes, which represent those green squares on the screen. And those represent just surface depressions or areas that water can pond, not necessarily large scale like a pond, but just any kind of depression that we notice on the actual topographic data. And so that's why it's great for us to use the latest and greatest data, which was pretty resolute, about 3 feet or so. And in between all these nodes, they're connected using conduits. And so those conduits represent not only the actual storm drain pipes, but also the overland flows, such as swales or streams. And they basically let us account for almost 17 miles of drainage within this watershed. And they all subsequently drain down there to the Treadhaven River in the bottom left-hand corner, which is our single red triangle, basically. Next slide, please.
Nick, can I ask a quick question while you're...
Absolutely.
On this number of subbasins,
Yep.
is it seems to be there's between 2 to 3 nodes per subbasin on average. I mean, you had 300 and some.
yeah.
Is it common, is it better to have more nodes?
You know, you can always incorporate more
Okay.
detail into the model. It's, you know, it's that trade-off there. Once you start, it takes a lot of time to build more nodes. So it's, you know, you have to get to that working level of how much detail do you want to put in versus how much time are you really getting out of the model, basically.
Okay.
And so here's actually just a good 3D representation of the swim model and what we call the dual drainage approach. And so one of the great things about swim is that you not only are calculating flows through the stormwater pipes themselves and the overland flows, but you're also seeing how these two conveyance systems interact. And so you might think of, you know, a normal rain event where it rains, it hits the road, it runs down to an inlet, can get in the pipe and get carried downstream. As we get looking at bigger storms and more rainfall, swim is a, you know, pretty complex model, and it can account for things like reverse flow. So if the pipes are exceeded in capacity, it can calculate how much is actually reverse flowing out of those pipes, hitting the roads again, and then continuing on farther down the system until it can find its way as the peak flows pass through the system. So, you know, especially also being close to the eastern shore, it can account for tailwater and tidal conditions. So we just thought this was a good, you know, 3D image to help paint that picture of the swim model. So you can go to the next one. I'll just talk about the previous slide. Unfortunately, that one didn't load. But once we were up and running, you know, one of the analyses that we started to look at was identifying flood-prone structures or just buildings in general. And so basically what that last image was hoping to show you was that we could compare water surface elevations from the model at all the different nodes and can compare that to adjacent structures and their at-grade elevations and identify what, you know, if there is some kind of impact to adjacent buildings. And so the last one, basically, we were just showing what buildings experienced some level of inundation for the 10-year and the 100-year storm. And that was just one of the kind of sub-analyses that we did as we went through the model to help, you know, ultimately work towards the goal of helping identify problem areas for the town. And so another subsequent analysis we did is what we call the level of service for each of the pipes. And really that's just quantifying the capacity of all the individual closed pipes in the system to convey a certain storm. And so there's a lot of numbers on this table, but a good metric and a good takeaway is the 10-year storm, which is commonly used in hydraulic analysis. And you can see if a 10-year storm were to occur in the watershed, approximately 50% of the closed system cannot adequately convey that storm. So that just means, you know, for the peak flows, the system, half of it could not convey it, and it would contribute to overland flooding. So, you know, we can break it down by all the different years, but the 10 years are usually a good design criteria for us. So, and ultimately, you know, some of these subsequent analysis, building this, you know, comprehensive model was really in the goal of helping the town identify areas of flooding. And we did that. We started by identifying 10 areas. And using SWIM, one of the great things about SWIM too, is that you can easily change the model to incorporate new pipes, more pipes, new inlets, and you can evaluate those options very quickly to see what kind of proposed improvements have upon not only the localized area of improvement, but the system as a whole. Like Patrick mentioned, you know, you might be able to let more water through in a bigger pipe, but what happens to the downstream impact of it? And so these are kind of some of the steps that we had went through with the SWIM model, and we actually were able to come up with concept level improvements for the town, working with Rick for 3 of the sites. And really though, I mean, this is just a tool that the town can use moving forward to drill down into any of these areas more detailed, or, you know, just an evaluation tool. Yes, sir.
So if we were going to sleeve a pipe,
Mm-hmm.
you would use this model
Yes.
to see what size we needed to use
Yes.
and the impact of that as the water travels to the watershed.
Yep, you can do that. Yeah, so that's another great option to evaluate as well. So, I think that's kind of had for the presentation. There's one more figure that I wanted to bring up, and I believe it's labeled figure 21, level of service on the PDF. And so this is, I just want to show this real quick. I guess it's a watershed scale, and I'll have them zoom in here in a second. But basically what we did is we took that level of service table and we colorized it to correspond to each of the different levels of service and those pipes. So if you zoom in, actually it's North Washington and Glebe Avenue is how you say it? Yeah, so right there is great. And basically, this is just one example I wanted to bring up as another way that you can look at this data that we've compiled. And basically what they're showing you, yep, right where the cursor is we have a lot of drainage converging towards that area. And basically the yellows, the reds, and the oranges all represent closed pipes that have a maximum capacity of the 2-year storm. And so in this particular instance, other areas are a little bit different. It's just a way to look at the data and determine, obviously there's quite a few there that have that, so maybe this area needs a more holistic approach. It's not just as easy as upsizing one pipe and alleviating flooding. Not all of them are like this, but that was just one example that I wanted to show to you. So I think that's about as much as I had to say, so thank you.
Thank you.
If there's any other questions, or?
So when is the study going to be totally completed?
So we've wrapped it up. We submitted the draft study to Mr. Van Amberg back in, I believe, the end of May. So we wanted to have this meeting today, see if there's any questions or any other changes that we needed to make to the study, and then we'll wrap that up as a final study and submit it back to the town.
Thank you.
Do you mind sharing your presentation? We didn't receive it electronically. Do you mind sharing
You
it?
have it. We'll share a copy on the computer over there. One of the nice things is whenever you do a model like this, and you do it independently, you put all this data in, and then you work with the town and they confirm, you're like, oh, that's a hot spot. Yes, we have, we have issues there. So it's nice to kind of see that the information is confirmed from the experience of the town engineers and staff that worked on this project. So
If we have additional questions after we've had a chance to look it over at our leisure, do we address questions to you or do we go to Rick?
I would recommend you go through Rick and then he can convey them back to RK&K.
Okay.
that'll work well.
All right. Anyone have any questions? Thank you very much. Yeah.
Clean up.
Please.
I just wanted to follow up on that. We were really happy with the results that we got from RK&K. They did a really great job, and this isn't just a static product that they've given us. This is something that we will be updating as we go. So anytime we make an upgrade to the system, we in-house are able to update that and see what the results are overall. So it is something that not only have they put all the work into now, but we will continue to update and deal with as we go. And it is something that we would like to see done for the entirety of the town, so it all plays together, all the other watersheds. We'd like to see those eventually done, so that it all is comprehensive and we have a lot of information to make educated decisions when we make upgrades and replacements to the town. So we were really happy with what they've done, and we're excited to see how it plays out.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anyone have questions for Sierra? I guess. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's 2 premium seats up front now. If you mind.
Yeah.
Like to take them over.
And due to great circumstances, we are actually going to move the Promenade discussion up. So actually, that's going to be next. So I don't know, if Don, you want to start with an overview from the town side as far as things?
I'm sorry, may I swap some people in? There are some people.
Sure. Yeah.
Pause for just a minute.
Pause for a moment, okay.
So I will go ahead and start. So the town of Easton set up the promenade, the closure of the northbound parking spaces on Washington Street Friday morning with our public works crews. They did that in a very efficient manner using both the barricade, the water barricades that we had available to us through the rental program and through the fencing that we had at Easton Police Department. We did that in about an hour and a half's time, and so it was fairly efficiently completed. The breakdown of that by our Public Works Department happened early Monday morning. We arrived well before vehicular traffic hours, and we were able to take it down in a little over an hour. Most of that was attributed to filling and draining of the water barriers. The Chief of Police is here this evening, should you have any questions regarding traffic and how the event played out over the evening. I know that the captain had written a document and a memo to you on Friday of last week, which I'm sure you've all had a chance to review. Beyond that, that's my update on what happened over the weekend.
All right. I know Mr. Benacasa is here to report from the business end. Actually, does anyone have any questions for Don first? No? Okay.
Council, thank you, by the way, for moving this topic up a little bit. To report on the businesses, I was asked to get basic numbers from the 3 restaurants that are directly on North Washington Street in the area where the parking was closed off from Friday, pretty much starting at lunch service, I'm pulling this down, through Sunday. So that's Doc's Downtown Grill, Scosa, and Washington Street Pub. Doc's saw, in fact, they're the one restaurant that reported back to us. They actually saw an increase the previous week when there was the barriers were up from Monday through Wednesday, but they saw 40% week over week increase Friday through Sunday. Again, I think it's important too to note we're talking about outdoor dining during a weekend when it felt like it was 120 degrees outside compared to the weekend before, which actually was pretty fair. They did see a 40% increase though. Scosa, we have direct numbers from them. Friday, July 17th, they had 95 turns. The Friday before, 70. 114 on Saturday, 96 the Saturday before. 51 on Sunday, 53 on the Sunday before. They did not use the street space on Sunday for Scosa, that should be noted. And then Washington Street Pub, 64 turns on Friday, which is a 130% increase over the week before. These are just outside for the pub. 89 turns on Saturday, that's a 115% increase. 37 turns on Sunday, that's a 75% increase. I think that, and certainly Doug is here, and Cheech and Bo are here from Doc's as well. They can speak more to it, certainly. I would imagine that the pub's very large percentage increase is that the pub is our one restaurant on Washington Street that has no outdoor seating usually. So the comfort level of those that aren't comfortable sitting inside really don't have the option to go to the pub except in this circumstance. The 2 main concerns that we had from this past weekend, we did hear back from 2 people. I think one of them, Tim Boyle from Vintage Books, did send some communication on to the council. He couldn't be here tonight. Did have concerns that the setup from this past weekend may have been more unsafe than the original, was just his concern, his observation. Again, we didn't hear any direct issues, but that was just his observation from Vintage Books. And then we also received similar concerns from someone that ate outside. They enjoyed their experience, but felt with the tables in the parking areas there, it was very close to traffic on Washington Street. And so I think that part of that may be attributed to, we know from the last meeting that we didn't have enough of the orange barricades to go down, so we'd have to use some pedestrian barricades for that as well. If the consideration comes up to utilize the parallel parking space again, which I do think from a bird's eye view, it actually worked pretty well. It got us more business into our restaurants. If that's one of the goals, it did so with pretty minimal traffic disruption. But if the consideration is to do that again, we do kind of stand by what we had talked about at the last meeting, which is that we do slightly like the ROADBED model a little bit more, which utilizes the parking space for pedestrian access and uses the full sidewalk for dining. It would allow people to not have to spend so much time so close to traffic, and also allows our restaurants to safely spaced out up to 3 to 4 rows, depending on the part of sidewalk that they're in. So if it's considered, that is something that we still think that model would be a little bit better, and also gets people off the blacktop, which of course is a little bit more of a heat concern. And then we do have, and I will just, Tracy and Natalie over at Easton Economic Development Corporation are doing a great job getting together a business meeting for this Thursday. So that'll be 8 a.m. Thursday at the Waterfowl Building. There will also be a virtual component to that as well for businesses that either can't make it or that don't feel comfortable coming into a closed space for it. But they're doing a great job with that. And we're really going into that meeting with the standing of kind of taking a step back. We did recognize that from our part, there were a few communication pieces that we could have done better that we addressed. And so this is a chance for us to step back and look at what our businesses need now, of course, during the pandemic, but also long-term, what they would like to see downtown.
Does anyone have questions for Ross regarding the weekend?
On SCOSA, did you get the percentages from them? I know you gave us the numbers.
No, I'm not that quick in math, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm concerned, what communication pieces that you're talking about?
Sure. So 3 things that we identified that we could have done better going into the Promenade idea to begin with. We should have been more industry agnostic. So we really focused on communicating to our restaurants and our retailers. We should have also included our service-based businesses more so that were in the downtown area. I think that they had some legitimate concerns in terms of not being notified ahead of time. And these are concerns from Discover Easton specifically, not on the town. We had, as we talked about, there was a little time between change of plans and our public meeting, and so we had some businesses, I think some of them are here actually, that knew of certain plans going forward, but by the time we had proposed a new plan, they weren't aware of the changes. And so we should have done a better job of addressing those alterations to those businesses. And also we should have had a wider geographic zone. So since Harrison Street was really never a part of those discussions, the businesses on Harrison Street weren't given as much time as those on Dover and Goldsboro and Washington that were part of some of the original discussions, and we should have done a better job of making sure we hit all those Harrison Street businesses ahead of time. Those are the 3 concerns that we identified from our organization.
Were any of those concerns of the businesses? Or?
Yes. Yeah, that's how we identify them. Those were concerns of the businesses, that they either weren't brought all the way along during the process, or that we did not kind of go door to door on their street, like Harrison Street, for example.
Is there any reason why you wouldn't do anything of that nature?
So again, I think that the Harrison Street was specifically because it was never a part of the plan. So we had some oversights in terms of the impact that a closure on another street may have had on Harrison Street. And so we didn't, although we did communicate it, we didn't communicate it in the same fashion that we did kind of sitting down with the businesses to go over some of those things. And I think we can attribute part of it to the pandemic, but there was certainly a haste to this plan that saw us having some alterations with town feedback and others that was pretty rapid.
Because my concern would be that the streets that would have adverse impact, there should have been some communications with them as well as the ones that would have direct impact.
Yeah, we agree. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that's what we're trying to identify now. And that's part of Thursday too, is to make sure we have a pretty large geographic pull for our historic district, and Tracy and Natalie, like I said, are doing a great job of identifying that and working to make sure that we have good representation there.
So you feel pretty confident connecting with those businesses that need to be part of the conversation?
Yeah, we always feel confident connecting to those businesses. I think, again, it was a 48, 72-hour turnaround in some cases that we just couldn't keep up with, and then those businesses brought legitimate concerns.
Any questions for Ross? So we, at our last meetings, have established a process. Your business meeting is Thursday. It is 2 weeks until the council meets again to discuss anything, which gives plenty of time for EBA and Discover Easton to host your meetings and go over all your results before coming back. I think what we need to discuss tonight is we've heard results from how the weekend went. Is this something we want to carry through for the next 2 weekends before our next meeting? Is it something we want to do just the one time and we consider it a fact-finding mission, or this is what tonight's discussion is about?
Well, were we going to allow any of the businesses in town to share on how their weekend went? Or are we just gonna go with, not that Ross did a bad job or anything.
Don't take offense.
And I'd also like to hear just from the chief if there are any issues this weekend.
Okay. Chief Spencer, was there any issues that were brought up over the weekend?
Oh, no, man, we didn't have any calls for service or any incidents related to the idea down.
I mean, I wasn't planning on hearing from the businesses, because I thought you reviewed with each
Ross
business,
doesn't
correct?
represent my businesses, and I'd like to have a comment.
We were just talking about the 3 restaurants, just for the weekend.
I'd
That's
like
what
to have a comment.
we take public comment at the end of the meeting. We're opening up for that,
Thanks, I look forward to that.
so. Gentlemen, any questions, or what are your thoughts for weekends now until our next meeting?
Well, I think the experiment that we did last weekend had some measure of success. And, you know, I don't have a problem moving forward for the next couple of weeks as we investigate everything. If you remember correctly, I suggested that where the barriers were and the parking area, that'd be pedestrian area as opposed to putting the tables there. I'm not opposed to doing that, just as long as we make sure that if there's any handicap accessibility issues, that we consider those
Okay.
in the walkways.
You know, 2 of the restaurants are here, right?
So that's my thoughts.
Okay.
Well, I'd make a motion then to close the parking again this weekend, 7/25, July 25th through August 3rd, which is our next meeting day, and see how it works on a longer period of time while we continue to investigate further opportunities.
So you would not just do it for the weekend, you propose closing it Monday through Friday also?
The parking spots.
Just the parking spots?
I'm not sure I heard you're gonna do it for the whole week.
25th through the 3rd, yeah, to see just for the parking spots in front of those restaurants.
I drove down today and there were a lot of people parked in those parking spaces. I think our experiment was on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so, you know, I think we should continue that experiment at this time and see how that works out.
If it's an experiment, I think it should be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I would not be in agreement with the whole week unless some other information, because I haven't heard all that I really need to hear regarding, I mean, I just heard, you know, one aspect of it, and I want to hear a little more. But if it's going to be an experiment Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not the whole week. It was 110 degrees outside, and I'm, you know, I'm not quite sure if a lot of people, you know, I'm worried more about safety. That's my real concern. And I looked at the how everything was arranged. It's only going to take one incident, and all of that's going to be shut down. And that's my real concern.
It's ours as well, which I think is why if we can find a way to work with engineering to flip the arrangement to allow pedestrian access on that side, because the truth of the matter is when you're sitting for an hour and a half at a table, you're much more susceptible to a safety concern than you are if you're just walking by for 30 seconds.
If I may,
Yeah?
I plan to be down in the police department tomorrow morning at roll call. The chief doesn't know it yet, but I'll pop in. But a lot of the observations that Greg has made are marked as needs improvement, and I'd like to see what his ideas are for needs to improvement before you go too far with your project.
Okay.
So if it doesn't hurt to wait a day or so, I would ask motion be withdrawn until we get a chance to see what needs to be improved and what their ideas are.
So we would have to have another special meeting this week to
I hope not.
move forward.
Well, if the motion's withdrawn, we can make another motion.
Okay.
So that's up to Mr. Abbatiello. Or you can call for a second. We can vote.
No,
Doesn't seem like
it hasn't
we
been
have
seconded yet.
So I'll withdraw the motion if you want to make another one.
Okay.
All right, my motion would be for the next 2 weekends that we reconfigure the same way we did, take those parking spaces on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and look at creating a walkway adjacent to the barriers so that the tables can go onto the sidewalks.
With handicapped accessibility.
Yes.
Correct.
I'd second.
We have a motion. Kathy, did you hear? Did you get it all? Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
I do have to leave, as you know.
Yes.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Is that okay? Just say this right off the bat, we work extremely well with EEDC, Tracy and Natalie. But hearing earlier, if one of the concerns the town has is whether it can fund 2 economic development corporations, we do have a concern with the liaison being an employee of either one of those. So I just want to make sure that's understood, that we love working with Natalie. It's not a concern of who it is that's picked as the liaison. We just have a concern with, if that is one of the questions that's being brought forward, then we certainly have a concern of any employee that's not a town employee being the liaison. Okay, thanks.
All right. Moving on. We now have a public hearing on the Dutchman's Lane.
So, in its simplest terms, what's before you, included in 6 pieces of legislation, is an annexation of Dutchman's Lane, which is shown in blue, not the tiny blue, the larger blue, and then there's a residential property shown up there as well. The county owns Dutchman's Lane, and the residential property is owned by Harry Covington. There are several pieces of legislation involved to get there. So there's the annexation resolution, which is 6119. The Covington property is 1.696 acres. It's residential. It has a single-family house on the property. And then Dutchman's Lane is 6.018 acres. If you combine the two, there's 2 pieces that are not totally connected because a small part of Dutchman's Lane is already within the town limits. So the total acreage is 7.714 acres. Attached to the resolution is an annexation plat and a meets and bounds description. There are 2 registered voters that live at the Covington property that have consented to the annexation as well. Ordinance 751 before you would apply zoning of R10A to the Covington property. And the ordinance does provide for a zoning waiver for the county if that is necessary. It makes it contingent upon that occurring. The county will consider the zoning waiver, the planning commission will at their August 5th meeting, and then the county council has a hearing August 11th at 6:30. And however, Maryland Department of Planning, you received a letter that's in your file. They suggested that perhaps a waiver is not necessary and that the R10A zoning district is consistent with the county residential zoning that's applied to the property. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. Either way, I don't anticipate that being a big problem. The county is a petitioner, and so they're very supportive of this concept. The ultimate goal is to transfer Dutchman's Lane to the town. In order to do that, the small blue area that was shown on the screen is 3rd Street. That was annexed along with Stony Ridge a long time ago in order to provide connectivity to the town. And now that same stretch of land creates a problem. It would create an enclave if that remains in town. So the plan is, by resolution 6120, is to de-annex 3rd Street in order to not create an enclave that would be illegal under Maryland law. And then ordinance 753, because the road will no longer be in the town limits, is to close 3rd Street prior to the de-annexation. The county did not want it transferred to them. It's, I don't even know if you'd call it improved. Some parts of it are slightly improved, and then it deteriorates as the further back you go. The town does use it for access for stream maintenance, and Easton Utilities does use it for access to utilities. So we'd like to reserve an easement for those purposes. But the road would not be open to the public as a public road and maintained by the town as such, because it would be outside the town limits. And finally, ordinance 750 would authorize the acceptance of Dutchman's Lane from the county when all of this is said and done, and would allow for that transfer to happen, which would happen by a deed from the county to the town. So it's a lot of legislation, but really it's fairly simple concept, just to bring that road within the town limits so that the town can maintain that road. This was, I think, generated primarily from the Easton Club East residents asked for this and requested it, so I think it is very well supported by the area. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Karen on Dutchman's Lane? It is a public hearing. Do we have anyone from the state? The county?
Tony Coopersmith was here. He had to leave, and I can contact him if we have any questions for him, but I think they're supportive of this concept, obviously.
Okay. All right. So if no one has any comments, we'll continue the public, we're keeping the public hearing open, and comments from the public can be addressed to us until July 30th, so they can be in our next packet for the August 3rd. All right. All right, at this time, I'd like to open the meeting to public comments. I asked my fellow citizens to be mindful that we are a small, highly interconnected community with no more than 1 or 2 degrees of separation amongst us all. We work together, we worship together, and we go to school together and live in close proximity to each other, making personal attacks all too personal. My hope is that at least in this chamber, we can start first with kindness and addressing each other and stick to the immediate issues at hand. I would like to see the process that we started over the last couple of weeks continue Thursday as the business community gets together to collect their thoughts. We have received many, many comments on the possible promenade in the form of emails. There are too many to read all of those out loud here, but please know that the mayor and council members have read them all, and your opinions are appreciated. All of your emails and comments will be passed on to the moderators of the meeting prior to Thursday. My sincere hope is that any additional comments tonight serve to address a specific topic, and not a person, that we do not fan the flames of discord that have been stoked elsewhere. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and your address for the record. Please remain civil and respectful during your comments. Abusive and demeaning language and the use of profanity are strictly prohibited. Is there anyone that would like to bring anything to the council's attention tonight?
Sure.
My name is Paul Prager, and I'm particularly relieved for your read statement just now, given the way you managed the last town council meeting, where I was called a number of wonderful things to include terrorists. Mr. Mayor, members of the town council, our last meeting, which allowed for public comment, seemed to generate lots of conversation. Not only in the emails that you just referenced, we've received many encouraging handwritten letters, cards, and notes of support from customers, concerned residents of the town, and responsible representatives of the community. I thank you. We have also since been attacked online, personally, our businesses, our customers, and supporters, by mean, uninformed, and misguided individuals. We believe these attacks were instigated largely by provocative and disingenuous posts by 2 individuals. Unfortunately, one of them I think is you, Megan, and the other is Len Foxwell. I represent Blue Point Hospitality and Blue Point Development, and maybe I should qualify what that means. I own all of the buildings on Federal Street between Washington and West Street, the corner of Federal and West Street towards Bay Street, down to the old Harrison's Florist. All of the buildings, but for Bank of America, on the south side of Goldsboro Street, all the way around the corner of Harrison Street. A good third of the real estate on the north side of Goldsboro Street, and the lower end of Dover Street between Washington and West Streets, which, by the way, will become a new bookstore, selling new books and magazines with a wonderful children's book section. I also own the historic auditorium on the south end of downtown. Its restoration already underway. This was to provide a permanent home for Chesapeake music, the Chamber Music Festival, and the Chesapeake Jazz Festival. The theater would have served the community as a home for authors, book signings, film festivals, Washington College lecturers, Frederick Douglass Day, children's theater and dance, church events, Blue Star family gatherings, and would have also provided an additional beautiful resource for town fairs and festivals, plein air, waterfowl, and others. We recently acquired the adjacent space, which now provides a beautiful gathering place for those who participate in Talbot County democratic activities, voter registration, and political discourse. All of this we subsidized happily, thinking it served the community. With one exception, each of the properties we acquired was in some form of physical or financial distress. Many were vacant and on the market for years. What that means is that we bought buildings downtown that had windows boarded up, no or few tenants, electrical and plumbing that was dated and in disrepair and unsafe, roofs falling in. Many spaces simply were unserviceable. We bought them as is, where is, and when no one else would. These buildings have been restored well beyond any notion of financial return, consistent with the goals of the historic district, and significantly contribute to the beauty of our downtown. We are over 60 employees downtown, Megan. We have 52 independent contractors working round the clock downtown on our projects. Ronald Covey Masonry, Connor Plumbing, Heating Systems, R.L. Ewing, Fluarties, Lane Engineering, McHale, Trice Construction, Warren's Woodworks, and that's just to name a few. We have wonderful tenants that represent a professional workforce downtown of 90 individuals. Let me tell you our approach. We believe a robust downtown is essential for a healthy and vibrant community. Why do I care? Why don't I just sit at my farm and walk the dogs and pretend that's enough, like all those haters you prompt on social media suggest I do?
Nope.
I care because I love this town. I care because I relocated families here from Colorado and New York to work in my energy business. I care because I built a home here that I fervently pray keeps my children and someday their children coming back. I care because every member on our team is amazing, works to deliver a quality experience, seeks professional advancement, and without exception gives back to our shared community. And I know that community, a community rich in diversity and choice, is the only way to make this a home for everyone. Initially, we tried to bring businesses downtown, businesses we didn't know, businesses we respect. I'll give you an example. Emily at Piazza, a world-class entrepreneur, marketer. She understands her business so entirely well, we were devoted to her. We just couldn't get her downtown. And why? Because she is devoted to her clients, and the primary concern was parking. Now, parking is a very good thing to discuss. Megan's idea of the promenade was a loss of more than 20 spots right there on Washington Street. I'm not a parking expert. I'm not a town planner, nor a traffic consultant, but I want to do the math. If you assume each spot turns 6 times a day, 6 times 20 equals 120. Now assume 2 people per car. Some have 1, some have 4. Let's just assume 2. 120 cars times 2 people per car is 240. That is a loss of over 240 visitors downtown each day when you close Washington Street. If you closed it for 2 months, that's 240 times 60, which equals 14,400. That's almost 15,000 visitors and customers lost to downtown. if you close Washington Street for the sake of helping two businesses. I'm confident the traffic consultant will come up with better numbers, but we just won't know until we hire one. I hope you get the point. By the way, that is particularly egregious when you consider some of the older people or disabled people in our community. For them, the notion of limited parking is far more difficult than a young fella or gal who's happy to walk the extra half a mile to get parking. Let's talk about a bookstore. We actually offered to invest in the new center when it became apparent the family that owned it wanted to leave. How do you have a great town without a bookstore? Without a place for children to find a book that might capture their imagination? First, I went to Tim Boyle at Vintage Books. I loved his shop. I was a fan, I was a devoted customer. And I said, do you know anybody that could help us who knows about the book business? He said, unfortunately, he didn't. We even took out an ad. We ran it for weeks in the Star Democrat and the Annapolis paper. Finally, the Easton Economic Development Corporation forwarded the resume of an amazing woman, Martha Thomas, who wanted to run a bookstore and learn the business. So we built a bookstore. Boycott it if you want. Cheat children of the opportunity to love books, to dream, to imagine, and to understand things greater than the social hatred that has been spread online in the Easton Community Development Group. We advertised to advance Easton as a destination. Washingtonian, Garden and Gun, Tidewater Times, Capital Gazette, Chesapeake Chamber Music Festival, My Easton Shore Wedding, Capital File, DC Magazine, The Real Deal. But we didn't just advertise our businesses. We pushed the town. We pushed the county. We advertised other merchants here, the Art Academy, the Maritime Museum, even the Inniperry Cabin. We advertised Easton and Talbot together. Some of you prefer Rise Up Coffee to Weather Gauge. I think that's great, and I think they're great. Some people prefer Hershey's ice cream and the multitude of flavors. Super. We have a much more limited selection of ice creams in our little shop, but our ingredients are sourced locally, made with local hands and heart. And so we're a bit more expensive. But isn't that good to have a wide range of choice, whether it's fancy or dressed down, formal or sporty, expensive or not? Isn't it great having the widest range of choice in such a small town? Personally, I think it's fantastic and provides a reason for everyone to come to town. Locals, tourists, special occasion visitors, people paying their parking tickets. You may think we're expensive because our places are damn beautiful, and we actually put real effort into creating a unique experience for our guests. But we're fair and competitively priced. Our goal has always been, and it works, bring people from the Oxford Corridor, St. Michael's Road, Annapolis, Baltimore, DC, Philly, New York City, and even the Hamptons. We hope to bring people from wherever we can, because once they're here, they'll visit other shops in town, galleries in town, the Art Academy, and who knows, they may love it here so much they'll go visit Cliff or Cord or Chuck or Alicia and buy a home here too. The social media hit job was gross. The stated rules of the Easton Community Group on Facebook prohibits personal attacks, attacks on business, disparaging remarks, and yet the administrators on this site seemed all too happy to allow posts that were baseless, rude, horrific, and defamatory. Ask the administrators to identify themselves, and no, these cowards who administrate that site hide behind some sanctimonious statement posted late last week that said, "We all work so hard and give generously of our time, so we must remain anonymous." What silliness. In fact, Dr. Curtis Foy, Dr. Lori Porter, and Mike Campbell and others worked hard to screen, filter, and prevent posts from supporting members of this community, all the while allowing vicious, mean slander to be posted by uninformed experts who have no investment in town, certainly not in downtown, financial or spiritual. They'd rather hit Target and Dick's than fight for the parking spot downtown and shop at Sailors or Albright's. And all that vicious social media fiction yielded ugly threats of boycott physical violence and vandalism to me, my family, my employees, my customers, and my businesses. How did we get here? Well, you wanted to close the main street in town for an ill-conceived pandemic promenade. The police department suggested it was a bad idea. First responders, they too. There wasn't a clear objective. There wasn't a way to measure success or failure. There was zero planning. Ross didn't talk to us. He doesn't represent me, and he does not represent Easton business. I question whether or not Ross represents proper fulfillment of any duties whatsoever. The fellow at the Washington pub did a great job planning. He at least made cool Bud Light banners to hang on the metal barricades to pretty up downtown. I loved them. I went and posed for a selfie in front of them. But the reality is there wasn't one notion of how this might affect our businesses, our employees, our customers, our tenants, our contractors, the courthouse, law firms, realtors, or 90 other businesses in town. Not one thought about how we might lose business, lose tourism, challenge our tourism AAA reputation with a rank amateur plan that wasn't planned. And Ross and Jeff Schneider, I guess, it didn't occur to them to first consult with experts about the dire consequences of no parking in town for 2 months, the risk to an individual in medical crisis in the back of an ambulance, racing for the ER room and being detoured around town, or how people in need, desperately waiting for that police cruiser or first responder, how they might suffer due to delayed response because he wanted to have a promenade and shut down Washington Street. No one consulted the hospital. And let me remind everyone, we are in the midst of a pandemic. So having you or interloper like Foxwell on the other side of this attempted social media hit job against me, my businesses, your colleague Al Silverstein, with its repugnant and thinly veiled anti-Semitism, it elevates me. It elevates my team and those who actually care about this town and community and choose to act responsibly. I don't know Al too well, but I know he has served this community with honor. I am hopeful the other town council members now understand that as president, you're all equal votes. Your job here is to preside over these meetings. You don't represent me, but in fact, you have a duty to try. As town council president, I remind you, you have a duty to be above your own views, to be truly objective, and work even harder to consider a view inconsistent with your own, to ensure you have acted fairly and responsibly and consistent with your duties. The process you put in place has business leaders meeting Thursday to discuss their ideas. Anything that will diminish that opportunity for the business merchants and community to come together, that doesn't mean Ross. And any act you take to front run that, it just makes no sense. The promenade makes no sense. It should have been dead on arrival, given our town's construct, architecture, traffic, parking, lack of planning, lack of information, and the fact that we are in a horrible pandemic. I don't think that's the kind of leadership I would want representative of this town. It is, in fact, misguided and divided a town. I am thrilled that Reverend Elmer Neal Davis Jr., a member of a Gold Star family, has been appointed to the open council member seat on July 6th, and that he will represent Ward 4. Despite any hidden agendas or backroom maneuverings to prevent that appointment. Maybe that too is worth discussing in an open forum. But you know what, Megan? In all your years on the Easton Town Council, you never once called on us. Not one of our employees. All our investment and commitment to this town. All of our philanthropy. And you never once called on us. We are humbled, and I am humbled and delighted that Elmer Neal Davis Jr. took the time to do so and to get to know us and meet some of our folks during your very first month in office, maybe even your first day. I am hopeful and confident that with your leadership and other leadership, now inspired by all that has happened, that has been just terrible. I hope that you, Elmer, and the other responsible members of the Easton Town Council, our beloved town, will enjoy the stewardship it properly deserves. Thank you.
Don't forget to wipe down the counter.
I will.
Does anyone else have anything to bring to the council? Please step forward.
Just one moment.
Mr. Prager, you forgot to wipe down
No,
the,
we're getting the materials to do that. Thanks.
I thought they were available on the,
They're under the.
Oh, great. Even better.
and there's a trash can right to your left.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. My name is Scott Eggleseder. In the interest of fair and full disclosure, I have no business interest in the town of Easton itself in terms of the areas that are being discussed here today. I have no interest financially, indirectly, or directly at all. Also, I have the idea I'm about to share, I've shared with the president of the town council, the mayor, and Mr. Shearer back here. Can I go ahead and do a handout? Is that okay?
Same thing to mail.
By starting out, I'd like to reference an article that I read on July the 10th in the Washington Post. And from this article, I was able to learn that the following towns and/or cities or portions of towns have already implemented something like being discussed today. Annapolis, of course, Old Town Alexandria, Bethesda, DuPont Circle, Adams Morgan, Rockville, and Tacoma Park. The map, which I didn't keep a copy of for me, there you go, Scott. Thank you. Is based on a part of what Annapolis is already doing. It's my understanding from that very same article from the Washington Post that since 2016, starting on Wednesday evenings, West Street was closed for what they call their Dinner Under the Stars. It was so successful, it is now Wednesday through Sunday. In addition to closing down the streets for the restaurants, they have various vendors, artists, and musicians. Starting on Wednesday, June the 3rd of this year, 4 areas, excluding the main street of Annapolis. 4 other areas were closed starting at 5 p.m. on that particular Wednesday. It was so successful that those 4 areas now close at 5 p.m. every night until further notice. And then finally, Main Street of Annapolis, they do something different. The Main Street of Annapolis closes at 5 p.m. on Thursdays and Fridays, Thursday and Friday evenings, and from 11 p.m. to Saturday, on Saturday and Sunday, from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. If you could take a look at the little map I did of downtown Easton, it seems that the current proposals have tended to favor just 3 restaurants in town. And I think it's generally true that, you know, if you have a vibrant downtown with lots of restaurants, it tends to draw people for those reasons. The red marks on the map itself would be where some type of barricade, be that orange cones or police cars or whatever the choice happens to be, would be located. And I would suggest that we do what they do in Main Street of Easton as a starting point, which is Thursday and Friday evenings after 5 o'clock. That means that Monday through Friday, it's business as usual for all retailers, including restaurants, town business, county business. Nothing's interrupted. So I would suggest starting with Thursday and Friday evenings at 5 p.m., and then all day Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 11. You'll notice on the chart there, it's my understanding that, Mr. Prager, that you do not want Federal Street closed down. So you'll notice on the map there that Federal Street is left completely open during all times, Monday through Sunday. Then there's a barricade at the other end of Washington Street on the corner of Eastover and Washington. And then the section between Eastover and Westover, when I was a kid growing up here, that was called Court Street. So there's a blockade at the end of Court Street there. Eastover Street is kept completely open. And then the section between the alley between the Tidewater Inn and Eastover, that would be closed down to street traffic or to car traffic. And then a section from the corner of Eastover and Harrison down, 100 feet or so, would be closed off as well. The sun, of course, sets in the west. In my view, it doesn't make sense to keep Eastover Street open, for example, for Bannings, because it's not fun to dine in the sunlight. And so the building that they have there would shade the section that you see there. Same thing for the Tidewater Inn. So with that particular time schedule and with those particular closings, which could be done on an experimental basis, there is no restaurant that's open during those times, which is excluded. Federal Street remains open. The only exception that there would need to be is during those time frames, a left turn would need to be allowed from Federal Street onto North Washington Street. That's prohibited during normal business hours. The only restaurant that is excluded from this is Out of the Fire, which I understand has been closed for quite a number of months. I don't know what their plans are there, but they do have a rather sizable parking space between would be the east side of their building and the building where Sailor is located. So that's what I had to share.
Thank you, Mick.
Thank you.
We'll make sure this gets to the moderators. Anyone else?
Excuse me, he needs to wake up.
Oh, Mr. Eaglesteater, can you wipe down the microphone? Sorry.
Hello everyone, my name is Noah Matten. I am a resident of the town. I also have no business or financial dealings within the area of Washington Street that we are currently discussing. And I want to just bring up a few points to me, in my opinion, that seem to be maybe overlooked and seem common sense, but it's unclear as to why, they have not been addressed. One is, I believe that whatever happens and becomes a finality on Washington Street should be a permanent structure of some sort. I do not believe that the coronavirus threat is going to be abated within the next 12 months. So that everything that I've seen so far put forth is very temporary. Additionally, the idea of changing traffic patterns consistently increases risk for a pedestrian strike. I've done some city development in my career, and when you have traffic pattern studies, the greatest risk for pedestrian strike is usually within the first day to two of the traffic pattern change. I am curious as to why we cannot close the entire northbound lane of Washington Street, which would leave the southbound lane open. It would also leave access to the parallel parking, which has much greater density in front of the courthouse than in front of the restaurant establishments on Washington Street. It would also have the flow of traffic going towards the hospital and the police station if there was an incident and someone had to be evacuated. I understand that in our town codes, any barrier is required to have 1,000 pounds of stoppage. And I assure you the barriers that were put up parallel to the face of Washington Street businesses are just riot barriers. They're not barriers. They don't have any stoppage if someone were to swerve into that area. The water-filled barriers, which I assume you guys rent it, do meet that criteria. I'm sure that if we were able to come up with a permanent plan, that there are many business and community people who would back funding, putting a much more attractive barrier that could meet the threshold of the 1,000-pound stoppage. And I understand that currently people probably aren't going to sit outside and eat. I don't think anybody really wants to do anything outside at this point, but this is going to be with us for a while. And I think it is a very responsible thing for the town and all of its citizens to try to observe, not crowding into closed spaces where we know transmission of this virus happens predominantly. And although we may have been spared here so far, it does not mean that can change. So as far as this diatribe from Blue Point, I think that we should all, as a community, try to stick with moving forward and making change, because change is the only thing that's constant. And we have an event in our lives right now that could very well snuff out what is left of some of the independent, not Blue Point hospitality businesses downtown. And I think that the Promenade is good in the fact that it gives a semblance of normalcy for the town citizens. And I don't feel as though it should be dictated by a small portion of the town's, I guess not even citizens, investors. So that's all I have for the town council. And I appreciate that you guys called this meeting. When I heard about the meeting a week ago, I was kind of flabbergasted and kind of felt as though that what is hung in front of all of your seats was not being followed. So I appreciate that moving forward that we continue this open conversation. So thank you.
Does anyone else have anything to bring before the council?
Good afternoon, good evening, Stephen Mangasarian. I too have been dismayed by the tone of rhetoric that's been going around town, and kind of an experiment. I'm opening myself up to it also, because unless it's absolutely personal against Mr. Prager, I too am opposing the Washington Street closure. I own restaurants downtown. If somebody wants to boycott me, so be it. So we'll do an experiment. Is it just personal, or is it just because I oppose that? I would be remiss if I didn't bring up something that my province stats professor would have told me, and that is, with all due respect to the numbers that Ross presented, if you have 2 diners and normally and then 4 diners show up, you have an increase of 100%. So percentages can be manipulated. I have no doubt that there was an increase in diners, but let's also remember that this was a modified plein air weekend. There were a lot of extra people in town. Bannings felt it, Breakfast in Easton felt it. So we all were lifted a little bit. All through this discussion about Washington Street, I have really heard no cogent argument for how this really helps restaurants and businesses. It's mostly been, you're talking about restaurants, whereas nobody's really asked me as a restaurant owner, and I'm, with the exception of maybe one other, I've owned and operated a restaurant downtown longer than anybody else. I think there's only one person who's been there longer than I have. I've been in the restaurant business 45 years. I've owned 10 restaurants, all of them successful. Nobody really asked me what I thought about all this. Do I think seating is a problem? I really don't. Do we need more tables? No, not really. I mean, Granted, people are seating outside, but is that at the expense of seating inside? We feel at Banning's where people just don't want to seat inside. They'd rather sit outside, whether it's fear of the virus or whatever. They do want to seat outside. Is the outside seating a good idea? Sure. But is closing Washington Street the solution? I didn't plan, I have a more broad discussion I wanted to bring up, but just since everyone's talking about Washington Street, let's think about this for just a second. There are 27 parking spots on Washington Street, parallel and angled. If you close down Washington Street, you lose those 27 spots. All right? Now, take a drive around Easton at 1:30 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon and find me 27 open spots. Most of the parking lots are at the maximum capacity. Goldsboro and Dover are always parked. Find me those extra spots. Now, the presumption is that you're going to have people driving into town in order to take advantage of that closed Washington Street promenade in order to eat. Where are they going to park? We've already discovered that there are no more parking spaces. So now you've got people wandering in to do what? Hang out at the courthouse? Let's talk about whether closing streets is productive. It has undeniably been successful in some places, Charlottesville, Pearl Street in Boulder, Santa Monica, and Austin, Texas, although they only do it on the weekends. But it's been tried a lot of places and it's failed. But let's think about why the successful ones have worked. Without exception, all those things have things in common. One is that they are pre-existing gathering places, meaning they are downtown. They have captive users, meaning there is a population immediate to the area that they're closing that's going to use it. There is well-planned parking and traffic strategies. There is an anchor within that space, as in a destination store or restaurant. And there is a coordinated retail strategy, meaning that all the interested parties have gotten together and have decided how they're going to do it. These areas are often called downtown malls, and there's a reason for that. These closed areas are a corridor between active restaurants and retail establishments. Take, for example, Church Street in Burlington, Vermont. There are stores on one side, stores on the other side, restaurants, and they are like a mall. You walk down and you have a choice to go either side. Close down Washington Street and you have a choice of 3 restaurants and 2 retail locations, and then a big empty place in front of the courthouse, which essentially this becomes a park. Personally, I think Thompson Park is a much more attractive area to hang out in if I were going to hang out in a park. And also, they also are in immediate proximity to some kind of special attraction, usually water. New Orleans, San Antonio. There's usually some reason for the promenade other than just retail. Simply closing a street like Washington has none of these prerequisites for what has already been proven to be successful. In the 25 years I've been down here in Easton, I've seen a lot of contentious issues to consider downtown. And with all fairness to Mr. Prager, he is not the first one to be vilified for being a player downtown. If any of you remember Tim Dills, who is now honored for being the founder of the Plein Air Festival, he was also vilified as well for trying to take over downtown. Fortunately or unfortunately, he passed away and now he's a hero. There are issues to consider that have always been contentious issues downtown. As I said, before. I've been a part of many of the meetings that have gone on and on over the years about this. One is the extreme reluctance to open up on Sundays. Most successful retail areas open on Sundays, but there is a reluctance in Easton to do it, which is similar to being told someone you're going to shoot their dog. Nobody wants to do it. Opening one night a week just for late night shopping. Nobody wants to do it. Again, I don't know why, but that's it. Parking is always an issue, whether it's a perceived problem or not. Personally, I think there are satellite lots where if somebody was willing to walk into town and park there, it's not that much more of a walk than at a mall, but no one wants to come drive into town if they can't park in front of the retail establishment they're going. Revitalizing downtown has been on many agendas over the years. As I said, I've been here, and it will probably continue. But it seems like none of the things ever go anywhere. None of the commissions, none of the reports, none of the arguments in front of the council, they never seem to get anywhere. I would like to think, and I have a plan that I'm going to present on Thursday, which personally I think is brilliant, for what we're doing downtown, that I hope will maybe follow through on, not my plan, but somebody's. But let's take the time to plan it right and not just come up with semi-permanent solutions. You want to close down this or that for maybe a weekend or so, fine, but let's be realistic. The experiment isn't valid this past weekend for the things that I said. I'd like to clue some of you in onto the ugly realities of restaurants and kind of give you background of what is bothering us right now. Restaurants live and die on cash flow. We absolutely depend on it. We work from 14 to 60 days out with our purveyors. We depend on the cash flow that comes in to pay for our goods coming in. When the COVID pandemic shut off our restaurants like a switch, we still were stuck with those payables that reflected what we were buying as if we were doing real business. So, what is it that the restaurants need right now? Frankly, we need help with finances. This is anathema to I know what you might be thinking, but how about a tax break? How about giving us a moratorium on the tax bills that are coming due? I just got mine. I can't imagine what sums are like, but mine was pretty hefty. These have to come out of our reserves. Reserves which should be paying for goods and services to serve what people we have coming in now. That's a real strain on us. How about doing in your temporary street closures, let's provide some activities to bring people into town. Maybe one night a week. There are lots of musicians. We see them during waterfowl. Bruce Berrier subsidizes Dave Hawkins to sit on the street corner on Saturday afternoons. Bring some activities downtown. Get some musicians down there on a regular basis. Get some jugglers, get a clown, do something to on a regular basis, and not as a big event, but just as something that happens all the time on one particular day or night. That brings people downtown. There are ways to bring people in town without closing off an entire block. Like I say, I have a plan I'll propose on Thursday, and I look forward to listening to all the other business people and seeing what they want. But as far as I'm concerned, that's what I think about this whole situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, I'll be happy to, or I'll wipe this down.
Anyone else have anything to address for the council? All right. Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I got it.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm Doug Kirby. I'm the manager at the Washington Street Pub. I know you all are thinking, what can I actually possibly say that I haven't said before? I want to thank you for giving us the weekend that we had. The numbers that I gave you, yeah, if I had 2 and it turned into 4, that's double what I was doing before we were allowed to do outdoor seating. One quick thing. We were late getting set up. By the time we got set up at 1 o'clock, I had 3 tables sit down immediately. None of them were local. And every one of them couldn't believe how great it was that they could sit out there. And we have plenty of shade. So yes, it's hot today, yesterday, Saturday, Friday, it was great. So I really appreciate you giving us a chance to try it for 2 more weeks. And I really look forward to working out any kinks that we need and coming up with a plan for all of downtown Easton. So thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I jumped one more thing ahead, so we actually have items from council. Mr. Silverstein?
Yes, I just want to say, first of all, tonight I want to thank everybody who took the time to come to the meeting. Those who spoke, thank you for getting up and speaking your mind. I'm looking forward to the meeting that's going to be facilitated by Easton Economic Development, and I will be watching it on Zoom because of the medications I'm taking from my transplant. I can't be in large crowds, but I will be taking notes, and I look forward to getting the notes from that meeting and seeing all the good ideas, hopefully, that will come out of the meeting. So I appreciate everybody's efforts.
I want to say welcome to Reverend Davis officially. Glad to have you on here with us. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight and speaking your minds, sharing with us your thoughts. I do look forward to Thursday and hearing the different ideas that people have. And I do want to say one thing, and that is when it comes to the decision originally to close Washington Street, that was a decision made by this entire council, not by one person. And we're trying to work with business leaders and store owners and residents to come up with something. But that was a decision made by all of us, not just by President Cook.
I too want to thank everybody for giving us their opinions. I value all of them. I'm hoping that all of you will make a sincere effort to ensure that all of the affected businesses will be present for the meeting on Thursday, which I have said a number of times is so extremely important for us to hear from all of you. We can't make a good decision unless we know where everybody is. And I'm not going to go back on what's happened. We're trying to go forward, and I hope you're trying to go forward with us. Thank you.
I want to thank each of you for coming tonight. This has been enlightening. And on my first council meeting, rest assured. So going forward, Thursday is a special day. It's my birthday, and I'm trying to have live another year. But I just hope and pray that as we go forward, that we're transparent, we lay the cards on the table, make a sound and logical decision for the betterment of the citizens of Easton.
I just want to thank everyone else for coming and welcome Mr. Davis for joining us. And we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everyone.